Tesla has a big problem. It's a perception issue. They say that 2025 is going to be their biggest year ever, a pivotal point in the company. But then you look at what they're claiming, and well, it's just hard to believe. And then you look at the past promises that Tesla and more specifically Elon have made, and well, it's not hard to see why some people are skeptical. But here's everything Tesla has planned for 2025 and why I think they just might pull it off. And well, if they do, I think they're actually right. This will be the biggest year ever. It's a pivotal moment for Tesla. So Tesla just had their Q4 earnings call, and while their profits were not as good as I think they hoped, a lot of the things they talked about give us a glimpse at the future, or at least where Tesla is aiming and what they think the future of Tesla is. And well, the days of them being just a car company are long behind them. They have plans for Optimus Robot. They have plans, big plans for full self-driving, and they have a bunch of new cars that do that self-driving coming pretty soon. Now, a company like Tesla, we don't really get to hear from them all that often. We don't get to hear what their ideas are. Now, Tesla's a little bit different because obviously Elon Musk, so he's on Twitter talking about it all the time. Their social media is actually pretty active, and some of the engineers behind everything are active over on X. So we do hear a little bit more than maybe some companies, but unless there is an event, the last one was the Robotaxi, unless we have one of those, the only other place we hear from Tesla themselves is an earnings call. And that's exactly what just wrapped up. And there's some big things coming. And really, the only question is, will this actually happen in the time frame that Tesla is going for? Now, there's a lot that they talked about. I'm just going to cover a few big things, and it really comes down to their cars, because Tesla started as a car company. They're still very much a car company. They seem to be making the push more into an AI and robotics company, and there's a lot of merit to that. In this case, it would be the Optimus robot is their robotics side, but also their cars are basically going to be the robots, and then the AI is what's doing the self-driving and the operating of Optimus. So it makes sense that there's the robots, the actual machines, and then there's the software behind it. That's what Tesla's doing these days. But when you ask the general public, what is Tesla? Of course, they're going to say cars. So those are still extremely important. It's where their money comes from, and making sure they have the right models in production so that people buy them, I think is more important than ever, especially when you look at their goals of where they want these cars and their autonomous fleet to go. People need to be buying these cars. Now, they did just announce the Model Y Juniper. I made a full video on it. I'll leave it linked. But this is their most popular car. It's the most popular car in the world. And you could tell from this release that Tesla is a little maybe hesitant or at least cautious about this rollout, because they are still selling the original Model Y with the original design and everything that came with it. In fact, they're still advertising it as their main Model Y. You kind of have to look for the new Juniper model. And well, when you look at the sales figures, it's no surprise that maybe they don't want to scare anyone off. If someone's in the market to buy a Model Y, just let them buy the one that they know, and we'll slowly roll out this new Juniper model. In fact, we're not going to see them hit the roads until March. So this is clearly going to be probably a good 6 months before we see the old Model Y completely phased out. Or maybe that isn't the case at all, because we did hear from Tesla themselves that they are working on more affordable cars. Now, this is nothing new. We've heard that Tesla is working on this, $25,000 car for years at this point. Tesla themselves has said that they are working on this, but where things are different is what that car actually is. Initially, Tesla talked about working on this unboxed platform. That's what they call it. And this is basically their next generation of car that would allow for this more affordable vehicle. And while when the Cybercab was announced, a lot of us thought, well, this is the first version of that. But it seems that that's actually not the case. The Cybercab is not this more affordable car, even if you threw on a steering wheel like we saw driving around the factory. I don't know. I have my theories about that. Let me know if you want to hear that. But at least as of now, it seems the Cybercab is its own thing, and that this, unboxed platform is still in the works. But that's where things get a little bit confusing, because according to Tesla, this new affordable model is coming in 2025. So it's not some new platform. No, it's what we have now. And that's where maybe the Model Y starts to enter the picture a little more. Now, in order for Tesla to make a more affordable car, I think there's a few things that you have to consider. First is that development on new cars is extremely expensive. This is not an easy thing to do. You have, of course, the design time, so you have to actually design the car. That's not just how it looks, but how it drives, the motors, the batteries, the interior, the software. All of this needs to be built from basically the ground up because it is a new car. And that's why they have these different platforms. That's why when they announced the Model S back in 2012, well, the Model X was a little bit easier because they had already done the development on the Model S. And then when they did the Model 3 back in 2018, 2019, well, that's why the Model Y was a little bit easier because they had already done a lot of the development on the Model 3. And now with this unboxed platform, they'll be able to develop new cars on that because they're, worked on the underlying components. You just kind of add the looks and the features of the car on top of it. But considering that unboxed platform is not coming just yet, well, makes more sense that they're going to use the Model 3 and Model Y platform for this more affordable car. And considering that they've been making those cars for so long, well, they could save a ton of money by just releasing a older version of that car. Or maybe just continuing to sell the current Model Y, so not the Juniper model, but the one that they've been selling for years. Maybe they just keep that around and lower the price dramatically. Sure, maybe they have to cut certain features, like maybe it's going to have cloth seats like we've seen in Mexico. Maybe it'll finally have a solid roof, which when we had the announcement of the Model 3 way back in the day, that was supposedly going to be an option. And probably the easiest way to save money on this for Tesla would be to include a smaller battery pack. Sure, for the user, you're going to get less range, which may not be that great. But if you're, just trying to get into an entry-level car, well, this would make the most sense. Not as much battery, maybe not as many interior or comfort features, and then bam, you've got yourself a cheaper car. Now, we've heard rumors that this is, well, exactly what they're going to do. The question is, what is this car actually going to be? Is it going to be just, a lower tier of Model 3 or Model Y, or are they going to call it a completely different model? Again, we've heard rumors of a, two-door or hatchback version, kind of similar of the Model Y, calling it something like the Model Q or the Model 2. We've heard rumors that Tesla is working on that. So is that what we will see in the first half of 2025? Well, it's hard to say, but it's pretty clear that this new unboxed platform or the robotaxi platform is not what this new car is going to be, but rather it's just going to be some type of retooling of what we already have with the Model 3 or Y. Now, getting cars as affordable as possible, I think is important for Tesla so that more people buy them. And with that, of course, is going to have more people with autopilot hardware. And so that they will be able to get this full self-driving hardware into the hands of many, many more people, which I think then will lead us to the next thing that, well, Tesla is saying in June, full self-driving unsupervised is actually coming and hitting the roads in Austin, Texas. This is let's say this is a bold claim because they have been promising, or Elon specifically, has been promising that full self-driving is going to come this year. And he said that the next year. And then he said that the next year. And well, you know the story. This promise of full self-driving actually being real and something you can just hop in a car, there's no drivers, you take it to your destination and it drives off. That promise, well, it has been a promise that has not been kept. But if you've been in a car with full self-driving version 13 on hardware 4, you know just how good this software is getting. And you can really start to feel for the first time, I think, that this might actually work. Like Tesla might pull this off. The software is so good that you can see the future and where it's headed. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be a hard future to get to. Now, the way Tesla talked about this makes perfect sense. So the idea is that in Austin, Texas, somewhere, it may not be the entire city, maybe it's just downtown, maybe it's a certain area, but in Austin, they're going to have their own fleet. So this is Tesla's cars. It's not my personal car. It's not your personal car. This is Tesla-owned vehicles that are running a taxi service. So think basically what Waymo is doing, think Uber, but autonomous. So you don't have a driver, you get in the car, hail the car. We've seen, some of those videos of what that might look like. And so when you explain it this way, well, it makes a lot more sense. This seems a lot more doable, a lot more feasible, and I would not be surprised if this happened. The real question though is, will it happen in June, which is when they said it will happen. Aside from the second generation Roadster, Tesla has been pretty good about actually delivering the things that they announce. Pretty good, not perfect. The question is always just about timeline. That's the thing that they seem to never be able to hit. In certain cases, they actually do better, like with the Model Y when it first got announced back in the day in 2020. That actually came out earlier than it was supposed to. But when it comes to, I don't know, something like the Cybertruck, of course, this took years longer than it should have. But here's how I think this might actually happen in a timely manner, close to when Tesla actually says this will happen. First, well, they're already practicing basically at their factory. So we got these videos and announcements that now on the factory line, when the car is finished, instead of someone getting in the car and moving it to its storage facility, it'll just drive itself there. So we got this video of a bunch of cars going to basically a parking lot, parking themselves, and that's it. And this is great to save on manpower and become more efficient. Every single one of these cars would have had to have been driven by a human before this. So, you can see how this could be more efficient, but also this is clearly a trial run to see how this software is actually going to work in the real world. Sure, obviously it's not a public street, but these factories are very busy. You can see even in these videos, there are forklifts driving around, there's other cars driving around, there will be people walking around, and there will be other Teslas driving autonomously around these other autonomous cars. So this is a good place to kind of dip their toe in the water. And another thing to consider, and why this makes more sense, is that when Tesla did the robo-taxi announcements at the Warner Brothers studio, well, we saw that they actually did pre-mapping of the area to make sure that the cars knew exactly what was going on around them. And if they're launching in Austin, Texas, let's say they're launching on like 6th Street downtown or something in that area, maybe a 10-mile radius or something, well, Tesla, I think, clearly will go map every single thing out and make sure that the cars know exactly what is going on those streets, so that the only variables the car really has to worry about is, pedestrians and other traffic, and they don't have to worry about the map itself. So the car can perfectly know that this is a turn lane, this is the straight lane, this is the right turn lane, whereas sometimes if you've, used these FSD betas, sometimes it doesn't know exactly what to do. It's still reading the street and kind of messing up. But I would not be surprised that if they launch this service, or when they launch this service, that those roads will be perfectly mapped, and that will hopefully make it easier for the car to drive. And that way, Tesla just has less risk. They can actually announce it and it will technically work, and then they can kind of roll it out to other areas, which they said they are planning to do. They think that they will be able to do it in California as well in 2025, and that they will kind of get a more wide release of FSD unsupervised later in 2025. That I'm a little more skeptical of. Now, another reason this service makes a ton of sense is because I think the biggest hurdle for FSD unsupervised as a wide release, so like my car or your car getting it, the reason I think that is going to be harder than maybe it seems is not for the technical reason, but for the regulations. It seems hard to believe that suddenly overnight the government's going to be okay with all these cars just driving themselves. They're typically very slow when it comes to automobile regulations, but when it comes to testing or small scale operations, well, the government has approved those. So, example is Waymo in a few different cities around the country. This Texas operation would be no different than that, but I could imagine that the regulators would not like Tesla just giving everyone full self-driving unsupervised at the drop of a hat. I don't know, maybe that's not the case, and Elon's kind of in the government now, so we won't get political right now, but that all could change. I could see that being an option. So yeah, that's why I think this is entirely possible, and that it might actually happen, and maybe it'll happen on time. It just seems that the variables in this case are not as difficult as a full wide release. And like I said, if you've been in a car with FSD version 13, it's getting pretty stinking good. Now, I haven't talked about their plans for Optimus robot. They said they want to make like 1,000 of these, which is kind of crazy to think about. They have plans to make a Tesla semi-factory for its own manufacturing. They announced a bunch of different things at this earning call. And like I said, this is where we get to hear from Tesla themselves on what they're working on and what their plans are to actually get there. But if this actually happens, if we get this full self-driving rollout, well, I think this really could be Tesla's most pivotal year. It would be the year that you say, hey, my car went from a regular car I have to drive to a car I don't have to drive anymore. And that is pretty crazy. It's a promise Tesla has been promising for almost a decade, if not more at this point, but it might actually finally happen. I'm doubtful, I'm skeptical, but we'll be following along the way, and we'll see if it happens.